The stars outside the viewport of the Horizon's Promise looked peaceful, just like they always did. Captain Dae-hyun Kim stood on the bridge watching the distant lights of New Haven Colony, sparkling against the darkness. He had visited this place dozens of times. Good people lived there, families, children, scientists who studied the strange plants that grew on the colony's 3 moons. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," his communications officer said. "It's not from New Haven, it's something else." Dae-hyun turned toward the main screen. Static filled it for a moment, then cleared. What appeared made his blood run cold. Ships, hundreds of them. They were massive, dark, and covered in angular armor that seemed designed to intimidate. He had never seen vessels like these before. "This is Captain Dae-hyun Kim of the Terran vessel Horizon's Promise. We come in peace. Please identify yourself." The response came immediately. A figure appeared on screen. It stood at least 8 feet tall with gray skin, 4 arms, and eyes that glowed an unsettling yellow. When it spoke, its voice was deep and filled with contempt. "I am Commander Thakros of the Valthorian Empire. We have claimed this system. Your colony will submit to our rule within 1 solar rotation. Refuse and we will demonstrate the cost of defiance." Dae-hyun felt his heart racing. "We need time to contact our government. This is a peaceful colony. We can discuss terms." The alien's face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Discussion is for equals. You are not our equals. You are soft things. Weak. We have conquered 17 species across this galaxy. You will be the 18th. The transmission ended abruptly. Dae-hyun immediately contacted New Haven's governor. "We need to evacuate now," but there wasn't enough time. The Valthorian ships moved into position around the colony's orbital stations. Dae-hyun watched in horror as bright beams of energy lanced out from their weapons. The stations exploded one by one. Each explosion meant lives lost. Each flash of light was someone's family member, someone's friend. "Get us to the colony surface," Dae-hyun shouted. "Emergency evacuation protocols." The Horizon's Promise raced toward the planet, but the destruction was already happening. Valthorian ships bombarded the colony from orbit. Buildings collapsed. Fires spread. People ran through the streets, desperate to reach shelter that didn't exist. Dae-hyun's ship landed in the main square. "Everyone get inside. Move, move!" His crew opened every hatch, pulling colonists aboard. Dr. Minji Park, his chief medical officer, worked frantically to help the injured. Children cried. Adults screamed. The smell of smoke filled the air. "Captain, we're at maximum capacity," someone shouted. "I don't care. Get more people inside." Dae-hyun stood at the loading ramp, pulling people up personally. An elderly woman. A man carrying 2 children. A young couple holding hands, their faces covered in ash. Above them, the Valthorian ships continued their assault. A beam struck a building 3 blocks away and the entire structure came crashing down. Dae-hyun knew they had to leave or they would die too. "Close the hatches. Get us out of here!" The Horizon's Promise lifted off with nearly 300 people crammed inside spaces meant for 50. Dae-hyun watched through the rear cameras as New Haven burned. 40,000 people had lived there. He had saved less than 1%. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, Dae-hyun barely slept. He walked through the corridors of his ship, listening to people cry. Listening to them wonder if their loved ones had survived, knowing most hadn't. When they finally reached Earth, Admiral Hyunwoo Lee met them personally at the landing platform. He was an older man, gray-haired and stern, but his eyes showed genuine pain when he looked at the survivors. "How many?" he asked Dae-hyun quietly. 273. "That's all we could save." The Admiral closed his eyes. "The Valthorians sent us a message. They said New Haven was a demonstration. They gave us 1 month to surrender all human colonies and accept their rule." Dae-hyun felt rage building inside him. "What did the council say?" "They want to try diplomacy first. Ambassador Ji-won Choi is preparing a delegation." 2 weeks later, Ambassador Choi and her team of 12 diplomats traveled to meet the Valthorians at a neutral station. Earth's government waited anxiously for news. Dae-hyun watched the live feed along with billions of other humans. Ambassador Choi was a small woman, but she spoke with confidence and dignity. "We come to discuss peace terms. Humanity does not wish for war. We believe all intelligent species can find common ground through dialogue." Commander Thakros looked down at her with obvious amusement. "You bring words. We bring weapons. Which do you think matters more?" "Words matter when they prevent unnecessary death," Choi replied. Your empire has conquered many worlds, but wouldn't willing allies serve you better than resentful slaves? For a moment, something shifted in the Valthorian commander's expression. Then he laughed. It was a terrible sound, harsh and mocking. You still don't understand. We don't want allies. We want servants. And you humans will make excellent servants because you are too weak to resist. He raised one of his 4 hands and made a gesture. Valthorian soldiers stepped forward, grabbing the diplomats. Ambassador Choi struggled but couldn't break free. Let this be a lesson to your species, Thakros said, looking directly into the camera. This is what happens to those who waste our time with talk. What happened next was broadcast across all human space. The execution was public, brutal, designed to break human spirit, designed to make them afraid. It had the opposite effect. Daehyun watched from Earth. He watched as Ambassador Choi, facing death, lifted her head high and spoke her final words. You have no idea what you've just done. Humanity tried to be kind. We tried to be reasonable, but you've made a terrible mistake. When it was over, silence filled Earth. Not the silence of fear, the silence of rage being born. Daehyun looked at his hands. They were shaking, not from terror, from fury. Admiral Hyunwoo Lee appeared on every screen across human space that night. His face was hard as stone. The Terran Council has voted unanimously. Diplomacy has failed. As of this moment, humanity is at war. To every human in every colony, every station, every ship, we tried peace. They chose violence. Now they will learn what humans are truly capable of when we stop being nice. Daehyun reported to military headquarters the next morning. His diplomatic vessel was being converted into a warship. Engineers swarmed over it, installing weapons, armor, and systems he had never seen before. Didn't know we had this kind of firepower, he said to one of the engineers. The engineer, a young man named Junho Kang, smiled grimly. We've had it for decades.
Just hoped we'd never need to use it.
But if someone wants to see humans get angry, we'll show them exactly what that means. Across human space, the same transformation was happening. Merchant ships became raiders. Science vessels became carriers. Mining stations became fortresses. And millions of humans who had never held a weapon began training for war. The Valthorians had destroyed New Haven to demonstrate their strength. They had killed Ambassador Choi to show their dominance. They had underestimated humanity, believing that peaceful people were weak people. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 months after New Haven burned, the war began in earnest. Captain Daehyun Kim barely recognized his own ship. The Horizon's promise now bristled with weapons. Missile pods covered its hull. Energy cannons protruded from every angle. Inside, the comfortable quarters for diplomats had been stripped out and replaced with ammunition storage and tactical systems. She's not pretty anymore, Daehyun said to engineer Junho Kang, who was running final checks on the weapon systems. Pretty doesn't win wars, Junho replied. But these will. He patted one of the missile launchers affectionately. Each of these carries warheads we designed 50 years ago, and then locked away because we thought they were too cruel to use. Turns out we were just saving them for the right occasion. Daehyun looked at the specifications and felt his stomach turn. These weapons weren't designed to simply destroy ships. They were designed to make death slow and painful. Are we really going to use these? Junho's expression hardened. They killed 40,000 civilians at New Haven. They executed our diplomats on live broadcast. They're currently enslaving 3 of our colonies and working those people to death. So yes, Captain, we're going to use every weapon we have. At Earth's military headquarters, Admiral Hyunwoo Lee gathered his top commanders. Among them was General Yoona Song, who led the ground forces, and Dr. Taehyung Nam, a military historian who had spent his career studying Earth's bloodiest conflicts. Gentlemen, ladies, the Admiral began, we face an enemy that believes we're weak. They think our centuries of peace have made us soft. Dr. Nam, tell them why they're wrong. Dr. Taehyung Nam stepped forward. He was a thin man with glasses, looking more like a teacher than a warrior. Humanity has the most violent history of any known species in the galaxy. We've fought wars that killed hundreds of millions. We've developed weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. Other species evolved past their violent phase naturally. We chose to move past ours. But that violence didn't disappear. We just controlled it, channeled it into sports, into stories, into controlled competition. He pulled up images of ancient battles. The Valthorians used standard military tactics. Formation warfare. Honor codes. They fight like it's a game with rules. Humans invented total war. We invented guerrilla tactics. We invented psychological warfare. We know how to fight dirty, fight mean, and fight without mercy when necessary. General Yuna Song leaned forward. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we remind the galaxy why humans are dangerous. We stop following their rules and start using our own. The first strike came 2 weeks later. Captain Daehyun led a small task force of 5 ships to a Valthorian supply depot in the Kepler system. Intelligence reported it was lightly defended. The Valthorians thought humans would need years to mount an offensive. All ships attack pattern Delta, Daehyun ordered as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. No warnings, no mercy. His ships fell on the depot like wolves on sheep. The Valthorian guards scrambled to respond, but human weapons were faster, more precise, and absolutely brutal. Yunho's special missiles struck first, penetrating shields and hull before detonating inside the enemy ships. The Valthorian crews didn't die instantly. The weapons were designed to disable life support and trap them inside as their air ran out. Captain, we're receiving surrender signals, his communications officer reported. Daehyun remembered New Haven, remembered the burning buildings, remembered pulling a child's body from the wreckage. Ignore them. Continue firing. When it was over, nothing remained of the Valthorian depot except debris and bodies. Daehyun's ships salvaged what supplies they could use and destroyed the rest. Then he sent a message on all Valthorian frequencies. You wanted to see humans angry. Now you will. This is just the beginning. The message reached Valthorian High Command and caused panic. Commander Thakros, who had ordered the destruction of New Haven, reviewed the battle footage with disbelief. How did they develop weapons so quickly? Our intelligence said they were a peaceful species. His second-in-command, a Valthorian officer named Corvus, studied the data. They didn't develop them quickly. They already had them. They've been hiding their true capabilities. Then we crush them now before they grow stronger, Thakros declared. Send the Third Fleet to their colony at Alpha Centauri. Make it burn like New Haven. But when the Valthorian Third Fleet arrived at Alpha Centauri, they found something unexpected. The colony had been evacuated. In its place, the humans had left behind automated defense platforms and something far worse, a trap. As the Valthorian ships moved into orbit, mines hidden among the debris suddenly activated. Explosions tore through their formation. Then human ships appeared from behind the system's gas giant, their weapons already firing. Among them was Lieutenant Soyeon Han, a fighter pilot who had lost her entire family at New Haven. She flew her small craft directly at a Valthorian cruiser, weaving through their defensive fire with skill that bordered on insanity. At the last second, she activated her ship's emergency teleporter, vanishing just before impact. Her ship, loaded with explosives, punched through the cruiser's bridge and detonated. Soyeon materialized on a nearby human carrier, immediately climbing into another fighter. One down, thousands to go, she said coldly, launching back into battle. The Valthorian Third Fleet was destroyed. Only a handful of ships escaped to tell the tale. For the first time in their empire's history, the Valthorians had suffered a major defeat. General Yuna Song led the ground forces retaking human colonies that had fallen to Valthorian control. Her tactics horrified even some of her own troops. She didn't fight fair. She didn't take prisoners unless they had intelligence value. She booby-trapped buildings, poisoned water supplies that the Valthorians might use, and used chemical weapons that had been banned by human treaties for over a century. General, the Galactic Council is protesting our methods, one of her aides reported. The Galactic Council can file a complaint after we win, Yuna replied, studying maps of the next target. Where was the Council when New Haven burned? Where were they when our diplomats were executed? We fight with the weapons we have, and we fight to win. On one colony, her forces found Valthorian concentration camps. Thousands of human prisoners were being worked to death, mining resources for the Empire. Yuna's troops freed them, and in return, the freed prisoners told them everything about Valthorian operations. They bragged to us, one survivor said humans were too weak to fight back, said we'd make good slaves because we followed rules. The man laughed bitterly. They don't understand us at all. Dr. Minji Park, working in a research facility on Mars, made a breakthrough. She discovered that Valthorian biology was vulnerable to certain sound frequencies. Within weeks, sonic weapons were being deployed. Valthorian soldiers who encountered them fell writhing in pain. their sensitive hearing organs overwhelmed. Is it permanent damage? Someone asked her. Does it matter? Minji replied. They didn't care about permanent damage when they bombed hospitals. Engineer Junho Kang developed something even worse. A computer virus specifically designed to attack Valthorian neural implants. Every Valthorian soldier had implants that connected them to their command network. Junho's virus turned that advantage into a weakness. Infected soldiers experienced excruciating pain directly in their brains. Some went insane. Others simply died. This violates every rule of warfare, a government official protested when shown the weapon. They made the rules. Admiral Hyunwoo Lee replied. We're just showing them what happens when you fight an enemy who doesn't care about rules anymore. 6 months into the war, the galaxy watched in shock as humanity transformed. The peaceful traders, the diplomatic explorers, the species that had advocated for galactic unity, they were gone. In their place was something ancient and terrible, something that remembered how to wage total war. Other species that the Valthorians had conquered began to whisper among themselves. If humans could fight back so effectively, maybe they could too. Small rebellions started on Valthorian-controlled worlds. The Empire's attention was divided between fighting humans and suppressing these new uprisings. Commander Thakros raged at his officers. They were supposed to be weak. Our intelligence said they were pacifists. They were pacifists, Corvus said quietly, until we gave them a reason not to be. Captain Daehyun Kim, now commanding a small fleet of converted warships, intercepted a Valthorian transport carrying a member of their royal family. The young Valthorian prince, who had never seen real combat, expected to be treated according to the Empire's rules of war, held comfortably, treated with respect, eventually ransomed or exchanged. Instead, Daehyun broadcast his interrogation across all frequencies. The prince, faced with human fury, revealed military secrets, supply routes, and defensive weaknesses. He begged for mercy. Daehyun showed him the same mercy the Valthorians had shown Ambassador Choi. The broadcast achieved its purpose. Fear spread through Valthorian ranks. These humans didn't follow the established rules. They didn't value honor or tradition. They valued only victory, and they were winning. The war entered its second year, and humanity showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, they became more relentless, more creative in their violence, more willing to do whatever it took to win. Lieutenant Soyeon Han had become a legend among human forces. She had destroyed 37 Valthorian capital ships using tactics that most pilots considered suicidal. She flew through asteroid fields at full speed. She used stars as cover, diving so close to their surfaces that her ship's hull glowed red from the heat. She rammed enemy vessels and teleported. Away at the last possible millisecond. You're going to get yourself killed, her squadron commander told her after another impossible mission. They already killed everyone I loved, Soyeon replied, checking her weapons for the next sortie. I'm just making sure I take as many of them with me as possible before I go. But she didn't plan on dying. Every mission, no matter how dangerous it looked, was carefully calculated. She studied Valthorian ships until she knew their blind spots better than their own crews did. She practiced her teleportation timing thousands of times until it was perfect. She looked reckless, but she was actually the most prepared pilot in the fleet. During a battle in the Arcturus system, Soyeon noticed something important. Valthorian ships always maintained formation. They followed patterns. It made them predictable. She gathered her squadron and explained her plan. We're going to break their line here, she said, pointing at a tactical display. They'll respond by tightening formation to close the gap. That's when we hit them with everything we have. They'll be packed so close together they won't be able to maneuver. That's insane, one pilot said. That's why it'll work. Soyeon smiled. She was right. The Valthorians did exactly what she predicted. When they clustered together to close the gap in their formation, human ships unleashed a devastating barrage. Ships crashed into each other trying to evade. Their own defensive fire hit their own vessels. In 20 minutes, the Valthorians lost 15 ships. The humans lost none. Commander Thakros received the battle report and threw it across his command center. How are they doing this? They were explorers. Merchants. Where did they learn to fight like this? His intelligence officer, who had been researching human history, provided the answer. Sir, you need to see this. He showed Thakros records of human wars. The world wars, the ancient conquest. The brutal efficiency with which humans had slaughtered each other throughout their history, videos of human soldiers fighting in conditions that would break any Valthorian warrior's spirit, records of weapons so terrible that humans had banned themselves from using them against each other. They didn't learn this recently, the intelligence officer explained. This is what they've always been. They just stopped doing it, and we made them start again. On the ground, General Unisong's forces were retaking colonies one by one, but the Valthorians had learned not to fight humans in conventional battles. Instead, they fortified their positions and waited for siege warfare. Una didn't give them sieges. She gave them nightmares. On the colony of New Shanghai, Valthorian forces held the capital city, believing its civilian population would prevent human attacks. They were wrong. Una's troops infiltrated through the sewers, emerging inside the city at night. They didn't announce their presence. They just started hitting Valthorian positions in the darkness, then vanishing before reinforcements arrived. The Valthorians stopped sleeping. Every shadow might hide a human soldier. Every sound might be an attack. After 2 weeks of this psychological torture, half the Valthorian garrison surrendered rather than face another night of terror. "You're torturing them," a Galactic Council observer protested. "Good," Una replied. "Maybe they'll remember this before they attack another peaceful colony." Dr. Minji Park's research team made another discovery. Valthorian ships used a specific type of reactor core that was highly efficient, but had a fatal flaw. If exposed to a certain radiation type, it would overload catastrophically. She designed a weapon that could trigger this overload from a distance. The first time it was used, a Valthorian battleship simply exploded from the inside out. No warning, no chance to evacuate, just instant destruction. When other Valthorian ships detected the radiation signature, they fled in panic. "It's not fair," a Valthorian captain transmitted. "This weapon gives us no chance to fight back." Admiral Hyunwoo Lee responded personally. "Was it fair when you bombed New Haven from orbit? When those civilians had no chance to fight back? You taught us that war isn't about fairness. It's about winning." Engineer Junho Kang's computer virus, now nicknamed Reaper, spread through Valthorian networks like wildfire. Valthorian Command tried to contain it, but Junho had designed it to be adaptive. It learned from their countermeasures and evolved. Soon Valthorian soldiers were disconnecting their neural implants voluntarily, accepting the loss of tactical advantages. Rather than risk infection, we've crippled their command and control, Junho reported to Admiral Lee. "They're fighting blind now. Then it's time to press the advantage," the Admiral decided. Captain Daehyun Kim led the largest human fleet, yet assembled in a strike against a major Valthorian stronghold in the Vega system. 20 human capital ships supported by hundreds of smaller vessels and fighter craft. It was a declaration. Humanity was no longer just defending. They were conquering. The battle for Vega lasted 3 days. The Valthorians fought desperately, knowing this was a turning point. They threw everything they had at the human fleet. Energy weapons lit up space like a deadly fireworks display. Ships on both sides exploded. Lives were lost by the thousands. But the humans had something the Valthorians didn't: absolute determination. Every human in that fleet remembered New Haven, remembered Ambassador Choi, remembered every colony the Valthorians had destroyed. They fought not just to win, but to make the Valthorians pay for every crime they had committed. Soyeon Han personally destroyed the stronghold's command center by flying her fighter directly through its shield generator, using the explosion to mask her teleportation signature. The shields collapsed, leaving the stronghold vulnerable. General Unisong's ground forces boarded the station through the breach. The fighting inside was brutal in close quarters. Valthorian soldiers, bigger and stronger than humans, thought they had the advantage. They learned quickly that size doesn't matter when your enemy is willing to use knives, explosives, and bare hands with equal efficiency. Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge of his ship, watching his crew work. They were professionals now, battle-hardened. Nothing like the diplomatic crew he had commanded 2 years ago. They had changed. He had changed. All of humanity had changed. "Captain, the stronghold is surrendering," his communications officer reported. For a moment, Daehyun considered refusing the surrender, considered finishing what the Valthorians started. But he stopped himself. "Accept their surrender. Take prisoners. We're not them. We don't slaughter those who give up. It was a small mercy, but an important one. Humanity could be brutal when necessary, but they hadn't lost their core values. Not completely. Not yet. The victory at Vega broke something in the Valthorian military. For the first time in their empire's history, one of their major strongholds had fallen. More importantly, it had fallen to a species they had dismissed as weak. Other species that the Valthorians had conquered watched the battle footage. They saw how humans fought, saw how determination and creativity could defeat superior numbers and technology. Rebellions that had been simmering began to boil over. On a world the Valthorians had held for 50 years, the native population rose up. They didn't have human weapons or training, but they had human example. They fought with improvised explosives. They used guerrilla tactics. They refused to give up. The Valthorian Empire suddenly faced wars on multiple fronts, and they were losing. Commander Thakros met with his war council. His forearms gestured angrily as he spoke. This was supposed to be simple. We identified a weak species and moved to conquer them. How did it turn into this? Because they weren't weak, Corvus said quietly. We mistook restraint for weakness. We saw peace and assumed cowardice. We were wrong. Then what do? Thakros demanded. We try to negotiate, Corvus suggested. Before it's too late. But Thakros's pride wouldn't allow it. Never. We will rally our conquered species. We will throw everything we have at the humans. We will show them that the Valthorian Empire cannot be defeated. He sent out the call to every species under Valthorian rule. Join the fight against humanity or face consequences. It was a desperate move, and it backfired completely. 3 of the conquered species refused outright and declared independence. 5 others sent token forces that promptly surrendered to the humans at the first opportunity. The Valthorian Empire was crumbling and everyone knew it. Admiral Hyunwoo Lee received intelligence reports about the Empire's internal chaos. He called his top commanders together. They're vulnerable, he said. More vulnerable than they've ever been. Dr. Nam, what do you recommend? Dr. Taehyung Nam looked at the star charts. We go for the heart. We strike their homeworld, show them that nowhere is safe, that if they want total war, we'll bring it to their doorstep. That's a massive escalation, General Unisong noted. So was bombing New Haven, the Admiral replied. They started this war. We're going to finish. The plan to strike the Valthorian homeworld was audacious and dangerous. Never in galactic history had an attacking species successfully reached the heart of a major empire. The Valthorian homeworld, Valthos Prime, was protected by 3 defensive fleets, orbital weapons platforms, and planetary shields that had never been breached. It's a suicide mission, one admiral protested during the planning session. So was fighting them in the first place. Captain Daehyun Kim replied, They expected us to surrender. We didn't. They expected us to fight defensively. We didn't. Now they expect us to stop at their borders. We won't. Admiral Hyunwoo Lee studied the tactical displays. Intelligence showed that much of the Valthorian military was spread across their empire, trying to suppress rebellions and defend conquered territories. Their homeworld defenses, while formidable, were not as strong as they once were. We have one advantage, Dr. Taehyung Nam explained. They still think like an empire. They believe their homeworld is untouchable because that's how it's always been. They won't expect us to actually try this, and if we fail, someone asked, then we die knowing we made them afraid, Admiral Lee said simply. But we won't fail. Gather the fleet. Every ship we can spare, this is it. The final push. Across human space, warships assembled. Over 200 vessels of various sizes representing every colony and every station. It was the largest military force humanity had ever gathered. Engineers worked around the clock installing Junho Kang's latest weapon systems. Fighters like Soyeon Hans were loaded onto carriers. Ground forces under General Unisong prepared for planetary assault. Before departure, Admiral Lee addressed the entire fleet in a live broadcast. 2 years ago, the Valthorians came to New Haven. They thought we were weak because we sought peace. They thought our kindness was cowardice. They murdered 40,000 civilians to prove their strength. They executed our diplomats to show their dominance. Every one of you has lost someone to this war. Friends, family, people you loved. He paused, his voice hardening. Now we take the war to them. We show them what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness. We show them that humanity doesn't start wars, but we damn sure finish them. Today we strike at the heart of their empire. Today they learn fear. The fleet departed Earth to the cheers of billions. For many, it felt like justice was finally within reach. The journey to Valthos Prime took 3 weeks through faster-than-light travel. During that time, the crew prepared. Soyeon Han ran combat simulations with her squadron until everyone could execute their roles perfectly. General Yuna Song reviewed assault plans for the 7th time. Dr. Minji Park briefed medical teams on Valthorian physiology, preparing them for casualties. Captain Daehyun Kim walked through his ship at night checking on his crew. He found young ensigns nervously checking their equipment, veterans staring at photos of people they'd lost, everyone processing the reality that many of them might not survive this battle. "Captain," one ensign asked him, "do you think we're doing the right thing? Attacking their homeworld like this?" Daehyun thought about New Haven, about the bodies he'd pulled from rubble, about Ambassador Choi's final words. "They came to our worlds first. They chose violence over peace. We're just making sure they never do it again." When the fleet arrived at the edge of the Valthos system, they found the Valthorian defense fleets waiting. Over 400 enemy ships formed a defensive wall between the humans and the homeworld. It was the largest space battle in galactic history. "All ships assume attack formation," Admiral Lee commanded. "Remember your training. Fight smart, fight together, and don't stop until we break through." The battle began with a massive exchange of missile fire. Thousands of projectiles crossed the space between the fleets, creating a deadly cloud of explosions. Ships on both sides deployed their shields and point defense systems. Some missiles got through. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Soyeon Han led her fighter squadron in a daring strike. They wove through the missile storm, targeting the Valthorian command ships. "Remember," she told her pilots, "their commanders think they're untouchable in the rear. Let's prove them wrong." Her squadron flew a pattern that looked random but was actually calculated to exploit gaps in Valthorian defensive fire. They lost 3 fighters on the approach, but the remaining 20 reached their target. The Valthorian flagship never saw them coming. Soyeon personally fired the missiles that destroyed the flagship's bridge. "That's for New Haven," she whispered. Without their flagship, the Valthorian formation began to break apart. Human capital ships pressed the advantage, concentrating fire on confused enemy vessels. Captain Daehyun's ship traded blows with a Valthorian battleship twice its size, but Junho Kang's weapons made up for the size difference. The Valthorian ship's reactor exploded from the inside, tearing it apart. The battle raged for hours. Space became a graveyard of destroyed ships from both sides. Debris and bodies floated among the stars. But slowly, inevitably, the human fleet pushed through. Admiral Lee's command ship took heavy damage, losing main power and shields. Enemy ships closed in for the kill, but before they could finish the job, 3 human cruisers intercepted, sacrificing themselves to protect the Admiral. Their crews knew they were dooming themselves, but they did it anyway because the mission mattered more than individual lives. "Break through at all costs," Lee ordered from his damaged bridge. "Get to the planet!" The human fleet punched through the Valthorian lines. They had lost 60 ships, over 30,000 lives, but they had reached their objective. Valthos Prime lay before them, its orbital defenses scrambling to respond. Engineer Junho Kang deployed his masterpiece, a weapon designed specifically for this moment. It generated an electromagnetic pulse that disabled the planet's shield generators. For the first time in their history, Valthos Prime was vulnerable. "Launch ground forces," Admiral Lee commanded. "General Song, the planet is yours." Thousands of drop pods fell from orbit, carrying human soldiers to the surface. The Valthorians had never been invaded before. Their planetary defenses were designed to fight from orbit, not on the ground. They were unprepared for what came next. General Yuna Song led the assault on the Imperial Palace personally. Her forces moved through the capital city using tactics the Valthorians had never encountered. They didn't march in formation. They moved in small, fast units that struck and disappeared. They used the city's own infrastructure against its defenders, turning buildings into fortresses and streets into kill zones. Valthorian civilians, who had never experienced war on their own soil, fled in panic. Some tried to fight. Most just ran. The human soldiers let them go. They weren't here for civilians. They were here for the government that had started this war. The Imperial Palace was a massive structure built over thousands of years. It was supposed to be impregnable. General Song studied it for exactly 10 minutes before identifying its weakness. The old sections weren't integrated with modern defenses. "Blow the foundation," she ordered. "Bring the whole thing down if we have to." Her engineers placed charges in the ancient tunnels beneath the palace. The explosion shook the entire city. The palace didn't collapse, but its shields failed and its internal power went out. Human soldiers poured through the breaches. Inside, they found Commander Thakros and the Valthorian High Command trying to evacuate. Captain Daehyun Kim, who had landed with the ground forces, confronted Thakros personally. "You," Thakros snarled. "You're the one from the diplomatic ship." "At New Haven." "That's right," Daehyun replied, his weapon trained on the commander. "I was there when you killed 40,000 people. I saw what you did. We are warriors. This is what warriors do," Thakros shouted. "No," Daehyun said coldly. "Warriors fight other warriors. You murdered civilians. You're not a warrior. You're a butcher. And now you answer for your crimes." Thakros tried to fight, his four arms reaching for weapons. But Daehyun was faster. The Valthorian commander fell, wounded but alive. Human soldiers secured him and the rest of the High Command. Above the planet, the space battle finally ended. The remaining Valthorian ships, seeing their homeworld invaded and their leadership captured, lost their will to fight. Some surrendered. Others fled to distant parts of the Empire. Admiral Hyunwoo Lee stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, looking at the planet below. They had done it. They had actually done it. The Valthorian homeworld had fallen. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from across the Empire," his communications officer reported. "Valthorian forces are surrendering. The conquered species are declaring independence. The Empire is collapsing." Lee closed his eyes. The war was over. They had won. But the cost had been immense. So many lives lost. So many people changed forever by what they'd had to do. "Send a message to Earth," he said. "Tell them it's finished. Tell them we're coming home." On the surface, General Unisong walked through a Valthorian concentration camp they'd discovered near the palace. Human prisoners, barely alive, stared at their rescuers in disbelief. Some cried. Some couldn't even react anymore, too broken by their captivity. "Get medics here now," Una ordered, "and document everything. Every cell. Every torture device. Every body. The galaxy needs to see what the Valthorians really are." 6 months after the fall of Valthos Prime, Captain Daehyun Kim stood in a courtroom on Earth. It wasn't a normal courtroom. This one had been built specifically to try the Valthorian war criminals. Commander Thakros sat in the defendant's chair, his forearms shackled, his yellow eyes dimmed with defeat. The Galactic Council had demanded the Valthorians be tried under galactic law. Admiral Hyunwoo Lee had refused. "They attacked humanity. They will be judged by humanity," he had declared. The council protested, but none of its members were willing to risk conflict with the species that had just defeated the Valthorian Empire. Daehyun was called to testify. He walked to the witness stand, aware that billions across human space were watching, aware that the galaxy itself was watching to see what humanity would do with its victory. "Captain Kim," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court what you witnessed at New Haven." Daehyun took a breath and began. He described the day the Valthorians arrived. The ultimatum, the destruction, the fires, the screaming, pulling bodies from rubble, saving just 273 people out of 40,000. He spoke for an hour, his voice steady but his hands shaking. Thakros showed no emotion during the testimony. When asked if he had anything to say in his defense, he simply stated, "I followed the laws of the Valthorian Empire. We offered you terms. You refused. What followed was inevitable. You murdered civilians," the judge said. "They were potential resistance," Thakros replied. "In war, there are no true civilians." The jury, composed of humans from various colonies, deliberated for 3 hours. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The sentence was death, to be carried out publicly so the galaxy would know that crimes against humanity would not be forgiven. Some humans protested the death penalty, arguing it made humanity no better than the Valthorians. Others argued it wasn't harsh enough. In the end, justice was served according to human law, and Thakros was executed. His last words were, "You think you've won. You've only shown the galaxy what you truly are, monsters." Maybe he was right. Maybe the war had turned humanity into something dark. But they had survived, and survival mattered. Lieutenant Soyun Han received the highest military honor humanity could give. She stood on a stage in front of thousands, accepting a medal for destroying 53 enemy capital ships during the war. But when they offered her a promotion and a command position, she refused. "I need time away from fighting," she told Admiral Lee privately. "I've spent 2 years killing. I need to remember what it's like to live." She retired from active service and moved to a colony far from Earth. There, she taught young pilots not just how to fight, but why restraint mattered. "We know how to wage war," she told her students. "Now we need to remember how to wage peace." General Yuna Song continued in service, but her role changed. She led efforts to liberate the species that the Valthorians had enslaved. On 17 different worlds, she helped freed populations rebuild their societies. She saw the camps, the mass graves, the evidence of centuries of oppression. "The Valthorians thought they were superior," she said in an interview. "They thought might made right. We proved them wrong. But we can't become like them. We fought because we had to, not because we wanted to. That difference matters." She established training programs to help freed species defend themselves, making sure no one would be vulnerable to conquest again. It was slow work, but important work. The work of rebuilding was always harder than the work of destroying. Dr. Minji Park returned to medical research, but she carried scars from the war. She had designed weapons that caused terrible pain, had treated injuries that would haunt her forever, had seen what war did to both bodies and souls. "I became a doctor to save lives," she told a colleague. "During the war, I took them. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to balance that scale." She founded medical clinics on former Valthorian worlds, providing free health care to anyone who needed it. Her clinics treated both the species the Valthorians had oppressed and the Valthorian civilians who remained. Some humans criticized her for helping the enemy. She didn't care. "The war is over," she said. "Now we heal. Everyone. Even those who hurt us." Engineer Junho Kang locked away the worst weapons humanity had created, the ones that caused lingering pain, the computer viruses that drove people insane, the biological agents that targeted specific species. All of it was sealed in a vault deep beneath Earth's surface. "We needed these to win," he said, "but we never need to use them again. Future generations should know these exist, but they should also know we chose not to use them except when we absolutely had to." He went back to civilian engineering, helping rebuild the colonies that had been damaged or destroyed. It was quieter work than designing weapons, but infinitely more satisfying. Dr. Tae-Hyung Nam wrote a book about the war. It became required reading in schools across human space. In it, he detailed every battle, every decision, every cost. But he also wrote about the danger of losing themselves in victory. "We won because we were willing to do terrible things," he wrote. "We fought without mercy when necessary. We used weapons we had banned. We became something dark and violent. We did this because we had no choice. But now we have a choice again. We can choose to be better. We must choose to be better." Admiral Hyun-Woo Lee addressed the Galactic Council one final time before retiring. He stood before representatives of hundreds of species, many of whom now feared humanity, and delivered a simple message. The Valthorian Empire believed that peaceful species were weak species. They learned otherwise, but I want to be clear to everyone here. Humanity did not want this war. We sought peace until the very end. We only fought because we were forced to fight. He paused, letting his words sink in. "We showed the galaxy what happens when you push humans to war. Now we'll show you what happens when we commit to peace. We will help rebuild. We will share our technology. We will be good neighbors. But never again will anyone mistake our kindness for weakness. Never again will anyone think they can attack humanity without consequences. We proved we can wage war. Now watch us wage peace." The Galactic Council accepted humanity into full membership. Some species did so with genuine respect. Others did so out of fear. Either way, humanity's voice now mattered in galactic affairs. New Haven was rebuilt. The colony that had been destroyed was now humanity's symbol of resilience. A massive monument was erected in the center of the capital, listing every name of the 40,000 who had died. Captain Daehyun Kim attended the dedication ceremony. He stood before the monument with Dr. Minji Park beside him. They had both been there the day New Haven fell. They had both spent 2 years fighting because of what happened here. "Do you think they understand now?" Minji asked quietly. "The galaxy, I mean. Do they understand what they saw?" Daehyun looked at the names carved in stone. "They understand that humans value peace. They understand we'll do anything to protect our own. They understand we can be both kind and terrible. depending on what's needed. Is that enough? It has to be. We can't change what we did during the war. We can only decide who we'll be now that it's over. A child placed flowers at the base of the monument. New Haven's population was growing again. People were coming back, building, living, choosing hope over fear. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Memorials were built. Veterans were honored. The dead were remembered. But life continued. Humanity had proven they could survive the worst the galaxy could throw at them. Now they had to prove they could thrive in peace. The Terran Defense Fleet remained on high alert. Their ships bore new markings now. Never again. It was both a promise to humanity and a warning to anyone who might think about attacking them. The ships themselves had been modified, keeping some of their wartime capabilities but focusing more on defense and rapid response. "We're not looking for fights," Admiral Lee had said before retiring. "But if someone brings a fight to us, we'll be ready." The galaxy settled into a new normal. The Valthorian Empire had fractured into dozens of independent systems. Some flourished. Others struggled. Humanity provided aid where it was requested, but didn't force their help on anyone. Other species watched humanity carefully. Some sought alliances, recognizing the value of having humans as friends rather than enemies. Others kept their distance, afraid of the species that had gone from diplomats to warriors so quickly. Trade resumed. Cultural exchanges happened. Slowly, the wounds of war began to heal, but the scars remained. Every human who had fought carried memories they would never forget. Every colony that had been attacked bore marks of the violence. 5 years after the war ended, Captain Daehyun Kim returned to active service, but not as a military officer. He commanded a new diplomatic vessel, also named Horizon's Promise. It was fitting. The war had started with his ship. Peace would continue with it. His first mission was to Valthos Prime, now governed by a coalition of reformed Valthorians who had opposed their empire's aggression. He met with their new leaders, offering trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. "Why help us?" one Valthorian official asked. "We destroyed your colony. We killed your people." "Your government did that," Daehyun replied. "Not you. Not your children. Not your future. We fought a war to stop your empire from hurting anyone else. We won. Now we build something better.